All right, welcome back everyone. I hope that you are still going strong in this course. It's been good and there's not a whole lot left. So if you remember in last class we talked about the present perfect simple, and now we will continue with the pattern and move on to the present perfect progressive. So the definition of the present perfect progressive states the following. The present perfect progressive expresses an action that recently stopped or is still going on. It puts emphasis on the duration or course of action. Alright, so again, as normal, we'll break that into parts later on. So as you can see here, we continue to use the verb to have as our main verb. We will move on to the exceptions in spelling. So we follow the same rule as in the present progressive. We need to add on ing, so the exceptions aren't anything new. For example, if there's a final E, it is dropped. But if it ends with two E's or a double E, it is not dropped. So you can see in the examples that we have the example of come, and since there's only one E, you drop the E and add ing. But in the case of the word agree, for example, where there are two E's, you don't drop any of the letters, you just add on the ing. Then the second exception is after a short stressed vowel, the final consonant is doubled. So as we can see in our example, we have the word sit, which changes to sitting. So you add another T, so you have the double T, and add on the ing, because we had the short stressed vowel before the final T, which is a consonant. And it is the same with L. Correct? So if L is the final consonant after a vowel, it is doubled. But that is only in British English, so just keep that in mind. If you see whichever spelling, it's correct. You don't have to worry too much about that for now. And the final one is if it ends in IE, the IE becomes a Y. So we have the word lie, and you take out the IE, add a Y, and then the ING, and you get lying. So if we look at the tip off to the left, bottom left corner, it's just another reminder that the double L is only in British English. And the exceptions are pretty much the same as the present progressive. So if you have any questions, you want to go back more in depth about these exceptions, you can go back and look at the present progressive video. And just like the present perfect simple and the present perfect progressive, there are quite a few signal words, and I gave a few more examples, such as all day, for 4 years, since 1993, that one you see in a lot of products, how long, with a question mark, and the whole week. So as you can see, all of these focus on durations of time. So that's something to keep in mind that we can remember from the definition of the present perfect progressive. Now, if we look at the following slide, we have the sentence structure. Now, the only thing new, we have our pronoun, followed by the verb to have, but in the present perfect progressive, you have to include the verb to be, which would be, since it's perfect, it has to be in the past. Okay? So, our verb will be in the present progressive, and we just looked at that. But, to make it perfect, just as in the present perfect simple, and there we conjugate the verbs in the simple past. But here, to add that factor of past tense, we add the verb been, which is the past tense of the verb to be. To go. Followed by a noun. So, we'll go ahead and move on to these examples. The first one says, puts emphasis on the duration or course of an action. I would say this is probably the largest use case in the present perfect progressive, because most of the time when we use it, it is to focus on the emphasis or duration of a course of action. If we think about the few signal words that I showed you, all of them were focused on the duration or course of an action. So let's read our example. It says, she has been writing for 2 hours. So, unlike in the present perfect simple, our example was, she has written 5 letters. Okay? So it was focused more on the action. But here the emphasis is on the time. We don't know how many letters she's written or what she's been writing, but that focuses that not on the fact that she's been writing, but she's been doing it for 2 hours. So that's probably the main use case for the present perfect progressive. We also have in the second example, it says action that recently stopped or is still going on. So that probably sounds pretty familiar. The example says, I have been living here since 2001. So again, we can see our pronoun plus the verb have, been, and then living here since 2001. So it's pretty simple. I don't think there's anything new. It's just organized a little differently. And the last example, finished action that has influenced. If you think about the present perfect simple, it was a finished action that influences the present, right? But this one is influenced with a D in the past. So we have to think about that a little bit. It has influenced the present. So it's still something that could have recently stopped or recently influenced us in the present. So the example says, I have been working all afternoon. Now we could say that literally in the moment when we just stopped working. We could say it when we get home and say hi to our families. So that's how you can see how the time frame isn't 100% set. But it is something that already happened, a finished action, but it influences us somehow in the present, in the current time. So now we'll go on to a few examples. The examples, again, I've organized them in columns. We have the positive, the negative, and the question. So let's read the affirmative sentences first. I have been speaking. He has been living here for 3 years. They have been reading for hours. In the negative, you have not been running. She hasn't been losing any weight. We haven't been skiing all winter. Okay, and now the questions. Have they been cooking? Has he been reading his book? Has John been sleeping a lot this weekend? So a few things I want to point out. First off, in the negative sentences, as you can see, again, we are going to use the word not. Now, we can always say have not. You can also say hasn't. We've gone over this, correct? But they're the same, okay? So don't get too worried about that. And in the questions, again, it's the same. To form a question, simply you change the spot of the pronoun and the verb to have. And that's how you form a question. Again, pay attention to my voice, the fluctuation in my tone of voice as I'm speaking those things, because those will give you a few clues to help you out with pronunciation. So I hope that this has been a help. Again, any questions about the specifics and the video about the present progressive will help you a lot with the verbs. Also, the present perfect simple will also help you. Again, this is going to be a shorter video because, like I said, this is just something, it's not too different. And to finish off, I've included an example, another framework, more detailed, about how to form affirmative, negative, and questions in the present perfect progressive. And a few questions, and I'd like to invite you to answer thoughtfully to these questions, to take a little more time and add some context. Maybe use some new vocabulary that you've been learning, but try to answer with paragraphs, not just 1 or 2 sentences, but something a little longer, more in depth. So I hope you've liked this video, and I will see you later. Bye-bye.